Should we be planting trees on entire farms? Hello, I'm Griffiths. Welcome to Winning Griffith. Here we look at everything beekeeping, farming, countryside living. Now we do reviews as well. Now, quite a big subject to cover today, and one which has been making the news quite often in Wales, especially because this is happening in Wales a fair bit. And that's big companies buying up farms, then planting the entire farm with trees to reduce their carbon footprint. So I'm talking big, maybe multinational companies that have got a large carbon footprint that wish to reduce their own carbon footprint. And the way they've gone about that then is to plant trees. They need land to plant trees, so they're buying farms and planting trees on that farm. So in this video, we're going to talk the pros of doing this, the cons of doing this, what I think is actually going to happen, and right at the end, what do I think of all of this? What's my view on it? Let's get into it. So the one major good thing about planting trees on farms or planting a large area of forestry is it can be very good for biodiversity and wildlife. As long as the right trees are selected, that can have a massive benefit to biodiversity and wildlife. The next pro, trees produce lots of oxygen, and who doesn't love to breathe oxygen? Ooh. And the next point is carbon footprint. Now, it's important as a global planet that we reduce our carbon footprint. It's been proven that trees suck that carbon up, storing it in the tree itself, therefore reducing carbon footprint. Now, whether you want to reduce your own carbon footprint or just carbon footprint as a whole, planting trees can be a great way to do that. One major benefit of planting a huge area of trees is it's great for recreation. Who doesn't like a walk in the woods or just to see a large wooded area, to see that wildlife, that biodiversity sitting there? That makes people feel really good. And it's great for going for walks. There's no livestock issue in woodlands, so you don't have to deal with angry farmers, etc. Going for a walk in woodlands is great for recreation, and it opens up other bonuses and benefits of maybe expanding that wooded area into recreation, into the holiday business, holiday lets, tree climbing. There's huge amounts of things you can do in woodlands that you can't do in the field. Trees are really good to stop places from flooding. Now, trees suck up a huge amount of water from the ground, keeping that ground dry, so any rain that falls on it, the ground can suck it up and the trees can suck up the water thereafter. It's a proven fact. You cut down a huge area of trees, then you are likely to get flooding there because those trees are not there to suck that water up. And one of the main factors for me is trees are really good for bees. We get a lot of nectar and pollen from trees in early spring. And right at the end of the season, after everything has gone over, the ivy comes in, and the ivy is always on trees. And that gives the bees the last bit of protein and nectar which they need for the winter. Another thing people forget, trees are very good for air pollution and noise pollution as well. So if you've got a big noisy factory, put trees right around that factory, that can reduce the noise and pollution. Another big benefit of planting large areas of trees. So that's the pros, and I'm sure you'll agree there's a huge amount of advantage or huge amount of pros to planting large areas of trees. And you may be wondering, well, if it's that good, why don't we just plant more trees on farms? Well, here are the cons. Planting large areas of trees can actually be very bad for the environment, especially if you're planting trees on acid grassland, which is very good for wildflower. If you're planting them on wildflower meadows, you're going to lose a valuable habitat there if you just cover the whole area in trees. And again, if you're going to plant trees on peat boglands, that's another big no, because you're destroying a very, very important landscape and resource that's in the ground that needs to be there, because the peat bogs, they store a huge amount of carbon. You don't want anything to disturb that. And that in itself is an important environment just by being a peat bogland. Because I think what most people, or some people, they miss the point here. Yes, planting trees is very good, but you need to have a diverse landscape, a diverse amount of trees, grassland, shrub areas. You need all that diversity there within your biodiversity, within your countryside, for it to be fully functioning and for it to be healthy. Too much of a good thing is bad in most cases, and it can count the same if you're planting too many trees in one area. Historically, planting trees, the big problem with planting trees, especially saplings, is people used to use a lot of plastic tree guards and they were just left there. So the plastic would break down, it'll turn into microplastics, and that would just litter the ground and eventually fall into watercourses. Now, I know companies out there, they actually have got a program in place where after a few years of the saplings stabilising and establishing, they actually remove the plastic tree guards. But that's a lot of work, and the carbon footprint of producing all these plastic tree guards is something that they need to account for. But in 2022, they have got biodegradable tree guards, either out of a woven natural material or a biodegradable plastic. They are a lot more expensive, so if people are planting trees, let's hope they are using those new tree guards. And the biggest factor, we can't ignore it, the biggest problem with planting a huge amount of trees on farms is you're losing farmland. You're losing land which is used to produce food, which is very, very important. I can't emphasize enough how important that is. We're not making any more land. The farmland we've got, especially the high productive farmland, that there is very, very important. And by planting a large area of that land up with trees, the UK may face a food crisis. And planting trees doesn't actually reduce your carbon footprint instantly. Now, everybody thinks plant a field full of trees, there you go, I'm carbon neutral. That is not the case. You actually have to let those trees mature and grow, and then they are sucking enough carbon. As saplings, they're not really doing much at all. Depending where in the world you are, trees can be a massive fire hazard as well. We've seen that a few years ago in Australia, large areas of trees going up in flames, and there's one thing worse than grass fires, and that's forestry fires. They can be absolutely lethal. Now, depending on what trees you plant, that can be bad or good as well. We're in the UK, this video is UK based, so if people are planting trees to reduce their carbon footprint, I would expect them to plant native hardwood trees, trees that are native to the UK. Those are the most beneficial to wildlife and biodiversity in general. If they're just planting hundreds of hectares up with softwood, that's not really going to be much benefit to wildlife. That is pretty much just a monocrop. A huge amount of wildlife is not going to be able to survive in that kind of landscape. So there we have it. Lots of pros, lots of cons of planting huge amount of trees on farms. Now, looking at the bigger picture here, these big companies, they've got lots of money to buy farms up. You know, a good sized farm in Wales may set you back £1 million. These companies, some of them are multi-billion pound businesses, or at least they're hundreds of £1 million businesses. By buying a couple of farms up for £1 million at a time and maybe financing that deal over a period of time, the cost to them is actually quite low. And that's why we're seeing companies now buying farms in Wales to plant up with trees to reduce their carbon footprint. And the farming community in Wales, and I think across the UK, they're quite angry at what's actually going on. They're losing good quality farmland to trees. But do I think this is going to be a risk to farming? I'm going to put my predictions down here on what's actually going to happen. I think within the next few years, we are going to see a lot more businesses buying farms over and areas of land to plant up with trees to reduce the carbon footprint. Now, what's going to happen with that? If we're losing farms, we're losing food output. What I think is going to happen off the back of that is the cost of beef and lamb is going to increase because less of it is being produced. I think the cost of land, farmland especially, is going to go up in value quite considerably. Number one, land is becoming less abundant, so that's going to knock the price up anyway. Less farms is going to knock the price of farmland up because, again, there's less of it. And if the price of beef and lamb goes up, the price of land will follow with the profits of livestock farming. So that's what I think is going to happen if these big businesses continue to buy farmland to plant up with trees. And eventually what's going to happen is the cost of farmland is going to be at the level where it's uneconomical for these companies then to buy farmland to plant up with trees, and they may look at other countries to plant up with trees instead of in the UK. So I think that's what's going to happen within a few years. Probably I'm looking at a 10-year time span. That's what I think is going to happen. So you could argue short term or long term, it's going to be good for people already farming, already own land. If the price of your product or produce is going to go up, then that's a good thing. The bad side of it for farming is, you're losing communities, you're losing good quality farms to plant up with trees. So that's my predictions of where this is going to go. So the big question, what's my view on the whole situation? Now, I am a hybrid. I'm a beekeeper, I'm a farmer, and I've got a background in countryside management, so I can see all of the important facts of this debate. Now, do we need more trees in the UK? I think that's a yes, absolutely. I don't think we've got enough trees in the UK at all. Do I think we should plant trees on the most productive farmland in the UK? Absolutely not. Any kind of lowland, good quality grassland areas that can be either produce arable food or beef and lamb, then we need to start seriously thinking about protecting that landscape to plant up with trees, because that land is just too valuable to the UK as a food industry. Because whatever happens in the future on the global market, the UK, we need to be producing X amount of food just in case things go wrong. We saw that with the pandemic, how important small supply chains are. British farming and British food is a major part of that, so that needs to be protected. Now, that's not to say we shouldn't plant any trees on farms. I've been to plenty of farms, especially where I am in Wales. The slopes are so steep, you can't get a tractor on it, you can't get a quad on it, and what ends up happening is bracken and other kinds of weed grows on it, doesn't produce any grass, and it pretty much doesn't produce any kind of value for wildlife. I know you could argue bracken and brash for wildlife, but as a general rule, there's not much in bracken. That's why people like the Woodland Trust, National Trust, and these other environment organisations, they actually proactively try to get rid of bracken because there's nothing there. I know up in the mountain areas, they pay guys to come in with robo-flails to cut the bracken out the way to encourage that new grass growth. Woodland Trust, another good company, they'll plant trees on those banks and areas to turn that bracken eventually into a thriving native woodland. I think all that's good. So I think the way forward and the proactively looking at this to try and please everybody, as I know this is impossible, is we need to protect our farms, we need to protect our farm ground, we need to protect our food source. But at the same time, we need more trees to reduce carbon footprint and for biodiversity and for honey production. Got to put that in on this channel. So how do you do that without totally wiping farms off the list? The best thing I can think of is incentivize farmers to plant trees on ground which is not really being used for food production. And that needs to be subsidized. You can't expect farmers just to pay or lose profit to plant trees to impress or make everybody else happy. No other business will do that in the world, so why should farmers do it? If that is subsidized, that there's money there to pay people to come in, to plant trees, to buy the trees, to fence that area off. The farm is still producing food, but then an area of the farm is used to reduce the carbon footprint of the country and to increase biodiversity within the UK. I think that's probably a much better way of looking at it, where you're losing a certain percentage of land, but land which is not really being used for food. So there you have it. You've got all the facts on this debate. What do you think? Do you think we should be planting trees on farms? Let me know in the comments. Is it a good thing? Should we plant entire farms up with trees? We don't need the food. We need the trees. Or do we need the food and we don't need the trees? Or do we need the two of them, and the two of them can sit within the environment and both be productive at the same time? Am I in cuckoo land thinking that's a possibility? Let me know in the comments. Well, that's it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and don't forget, if you like this video and you want to watch more of the same kind of content, then please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I try my best to upload new videos every week. Thanks for watching.